Jack the Ripper is one of those cases that still gives me chills to this day. It's so strange to think that the killer could just vanish like a shadow, leaving behind so many questions. Who was he? Why did he do it? How did he get away with it? These are questions that still haunt us.
It all began on the evening of August 31st, 1888. A woman by the name of Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly, was found in Buck's Row. Her throat had been slashed so deeply that the wound severed her jugular vein. Her body was left in a horrifyingly public place. No one knew at the time, but this was the first victim in a series of brutal murders that would shock the world. At first, it seemed like just another case of violent crime in a place like Whitechapel, but there was something different about this murder. The violence was so sudden, so extreme, and so personal. It was clear that whoever committed this crime was no stranger to bloodshed. But still, no one could have predicted what was about to unfold.
Think about it for a moment. The brutality of this murder, this wasn't a random act of violence. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. It's hard not to feel like there's something almost clinical about the way the killings were carried out. It makes you wonder what kind of person could do something like this.
Just 10 days later, the Ripper struck again. Annie Chapman, another woman living in the squalor of Whitechapel, was found in a small backyard on Hanbury Street. Her throat had been slashed, and her body was mutilated with grotesque precision. But it wasn't just the violence of her death that shocked the police. It was what the killer did afterward. In a gruesome display, he removed her uterus and placed it on a nearby windowsill. The level of anatomical knowledge shown in the killing was unlike anything the police had ever seen. Whoever the killer was, they knew how to use a knife, and they knew exactly where to cut.
When I think about this second murder, I can't help but wonder about the Ripper's motives. Was it about the power, the control, or was he studying his victims like some kind of sick experiment? This level of knowledge and brutality is it's hard to wrap your head around.
At this point, the police were beginning to realize that they were dealing with something far more sinister than the usual street crime. There were rumors swirling about the identity of the killer. Some believed that the Ripper was a local butcher, others thought he might be a surgeon or a doctor. The police were under immense pressure to solve the case, but every lead seemed to evaporate. But then, just weeks later, the Ripper would strike again, this time with an even more chilling set of murders.
It must have been an absolute nightmare for the police. The pressure, the fear, the media frenzy. It must have been like trying to chase a ghost. And then this killer seemed to be getting more brazen, more confident with each murder. It's like he was challenging the city, daring them to catch him.
On the night of September 30th, Jack the Ripper struck again, and this time it would be 2 victims instead of 1. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were found just minutes apart from each other. Stride's body was discovered in Dutfield's yard, her throat slashed, but there were no other mutilations to her body. It appeared that she had been interrupted before the killer could finish what he started. But then, not far from where Stride's body was discovered, the Ripper attacked Eddowes. Her throat was slit, and once again her body was grotesquely mutilated. Her intestines were removed and placed over her shoulder. To make matters worse, a blood-stained piece of cloth, believed to be from Eddowes' apron, was found near a local police station. It was almost as if the killer was taunting the authorities, daring them to solve the puzzle he had left behind.
The sheer audacity of the killer to taunt the police like that. It makes you think about what kind of mindset someone has to be in to not only commit these horrific acts, but then feel like they're untouchable. Could it be arrogance? Or maybe he just didn't care anymore.
The double murder sent the entire city into a panic. People were terrified, and the police were no closer to finding the killer. The media was in a frenzy, and people began to speculate about the identity of Jack the Ripper. Some believed he was a doctor, others thought he might be a man of the clergy. Some even thought he could be a member of the royal family. But even with all of these theories, the Ripper's identity remained a mystery.
It's fascinating, really. The more you look at the case, the more theories emerge. But none of them hold water. It's like the killer was a ghost slipping through the cracks of the city's defenses. No one ever figured out who he was, and that makes the case even more chilling, don't you think?
The last known victim of Jack the Ripper was Mary Jane Kelly, whose body was discovered on November 9th, 1888, in a room at Miller's Court. Her murder was the most gruesome of them all. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, her face slashed, her organs removed, and her body almost disemboweled. The brutality of this murder sent shockwaves through the city, and the fear was palpable. The police, despite their best efforts, could not catch the killer. They were left with only a trail of bodies and a growing sense of hopelessness. And after this final murder, the Ripper seemingly vanished. There were no more murders, no more clues, just silence. By the time they found Mary Jane Kelly, it was clear that the killer had escalated. This was the final step in his madness. And then, just like that, he was gone.
I can't help but wonder, what happened to him? Did he just stop, or did he find a new city to haunt? And so the case of Jack the Ripper remains unsolved to this day. Theories abound. Some believe he was a member of the royal family. Others think he was a surgeon or a doctor, but no one knows for sure. The killer vanished without a trace, leaving behind only fear, speculation, and a haunting legacy that still lingers. After all this time, it still feels like there's more to uncover. Maybe the answer is out there, buried deep in the past. Or maybe we're just not meant to know who Jack the Ripper really was. But one thing's certain, his story will never be forgotten. And that's the story of Jack the Ripper, a killer who haunted the streets of Whitechapel and whose name still sends shivers down the spine. We may never know the true identity of the Ripper, but the mystery continues to captivate and terrify us. It's one of those cases that leaves you questioning everything. What drives someone to commit such horrific acts? What makes them feel untouchable, like they can murder without consequence? These questions may never be answered, but the legend of Jack the Ripper will live on. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more dark and chilling stories. And as always, stay curious.